Oh, Julia, I thought, is that me?
And FYI, I asked, matter of fact, I asked the previous mayor to do mayor's coins for Falls, Dean Boersma, and Jennifer Southwick. And I've asked Dean, so you might just bring that up. I think those people have done some good things for the community. I think they need to recognize it.
That's true, It was, Jennifer Southwick and
Dean Boersma and George Paulus, the wrestling coach.
Oh,
He was inaugurated in the Washington Hall of Fame, Coaches Hall of Fame, as was Dean Boersma also. Okay.
Hey.
I don't mean Dean Boersma, Dean Wagner. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's Dean Wagner.
Oh.
I was trying to figure out how you got in the Hall of Fame.
Can we get one too?
Wait a minute. Carpet.
I'm getting too old. To be elongated road.
City Council.
City Council around Sunnyside.
That wasn't muted. Did you take your computer in?
Not yet. I need to.
I took mine in last Friday. I thought, well, maybe he can figure out how to get it on. And did you hear that, what was it? Microsoft was downloaded, and that was the wrong program.
It was the wrong Microsoft. They did home instead of business or something. And it's not compatible with our system.
Okay, you want to help me out here? I've been doing it on my tablet, not my phone.
No.
Well, I know, I said city council, and it came up with that. I get here and I get all anxiety.
Jackie, can you see with the audience?
No, I can't see the audience.
Close video.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Sunnyside City Council Workshop Meeting for Monday, March 7, 2022. Can everyone hear me okay? Myself echoing. Yeah. Can I have my pen back? I'll set it prepared when I have this in front of me. All right, so this meeting is being live streamed via Zoom as well as being held live in person in council chambers. For current directors, all in-person attendees must wear a mask, and every member will be called upon to make sure you've had the opportunity to ask questions. I notice we've got some members of the public here today, and I welcome you here. You are always welcome to attend city meetings. Do want to remind you, though, that during workshop meetings, it is not our custom to allow citizens the 3 minutes to address council. Very rarely do we have members of the public here, so it's not something that we have set up in our agenda. So apologies to anybody who is expected to approach the podium this evening and speak. At this point, I'm going to ask City Clerk Renteria to start the roll call.
Mayor Broersma,
Here.
Wheeler,
Here.
Councillor Farmer,
Here.
Councillor Ripley,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Restucci,
Here.
Councillor Hicks,
Here.
Councillor Hart,
Here.
Interim City Manager Alba,
Here.
City Clerk Renteria, I am here. Finance and Administrative Services Director Horner,
Here.
Fire Chief Anderson,
I'm here.
Chief Escalera. I see him here on Zoom, so I'm going to give him a check mark. Public Works Director Fisher.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, on our active agenda, the first item on there is a presentation by Dr. James Stevens. And in the interest of full public disclosure, Dr. Stevens approached me several weeks ago with concerns and wished to address council. It was agreed between us that the workshop would be the best forum for that to happen. Dr. Stevens is the chair of the Sunnyside iWatch, which is a neighborhood watch program. And so we have granted him 10 minutes to make a presentation. And I do want to commend Dr. Stevens and thank him for his patience with the rather strict editing I forced him to go through this afternoon. He had quite a presentation, and I asked him to edit quite a bit, and he was willing to do that, so thank you. There have been 1 or 2 changes, and in addition to the slideshow, we need to make it clear that the City of Sunnyside does not own this presentation. This is a slide presentation created by Dr. Stevens, not by the City of Sunnyside, nor was it commissioned by the City of Sunnyside. So that disclaimer is something that's important that everybody knows. And also, you will see this slide pop up a couple of places in the presentation, and it reads as follows. The City of Sunnyside cautions data users against comparing yearly statistical data solely on the basis of their population coverage. Any comparisons made are only meaningful upon further examination of all variables that affect crime in our city. The City of Sunnyside was unable to determine the accuracy or integrity of the data being presented tonight. So that disclaimer will appear in a couple of places in the slide presentation as well. So at this time, I'd like to invite Dr. Stevens to step to the podium and begin his presentation.
Thank you, Dean. It's nice to address the council members and the other members of staff here and our hopefully newly elected or appointed city manager. Yes, Dean did kind of roll me over the coals. Kind of office manager when we got done with the editing, but it was okay. At any rate, so the issue of this is to bring the community and our city together. We have an issue here that is beyond anybody's capability of handling it. None of you that was elected to this council ever thought you'd be in this position, including the city manager, even Chief Escalera. And so we need to come together. This is going to be a monumental task of strategic planning. We've been there before. 2011 was actually, believe it or not, was worse than it is. iWatch, is a group that formed back in about 2008, with about 8 different community members. We went to meetings for 3 years before we finally made a push towards getting acting chief of them. Still shame. And have to keep playing together. And we dropped crime 60% in 1 year. And that's possible right here. We don't have to tolerate this. And we have capable people to make that happen. Next. Next slide. So tolerating lawlessness is killing our citizens. I guess is dying out there. And so lawlessness is something we won't tolerate. I know that this council, I know the chief has talked to him many, many times, and I know that he is a proponent of that exact statement. And so the city has the undeniable duty to protect our citizens. And so why is this happening? Well, we have an onslaught here that nobody can absolutely predict, and it's going to get worse. And the culture of this issue is part of it, but we're going to be prepared for it. And so what is happening at this point in time? Next slide, please. This is the Blue Moon Tavern that was at round shot into it. I was down there. You can see him with the slugs on the door. The proprietor has closed his business there. He's 3 blocks from my office. We drive by there twice a day. My wife drives by there more often. I have to tell you, this lit me up a lot, especially when I went and talked to the proprietor. My heart goes out for this guy. In my opinion, it's a great business down there. A lot of people go in there for casual meetings, et cetera, et cetera. It's closed down. Man, he's demoralized. This guy is really demoralized. And so how long is he going to be out of business? We don't know. One of the questions I asked him is, did anybody from the city visit him? And they did not. I'm not admonishing anybody, but these are the things that we need to start to become aware of. This has to be part of our plan, this sensitivity. And I'm not in favor of this. Where the police but they were, as mentioned, we have a great presence down there now. Again, we're not used to this stuff. So what we do is we learn from it, and we take this to heart, we start to establish new policies, and you as our council are the ones that are going to empower Chief Al and Elizabeth to take charge of this. It's literally up to you to do this. We've never been in this position before. You have not been in this position, but you are now. And back to square one, people are dying here, and so we're going to work together to make this happen. Next slide. The broken window theory. Next slide. The broken window theory, an academic theory proposed by James Q. Wilson and George Kelly in 1982. They used the broken windows as a metaphor for disorder within neighborhoods. Their theory is that links disorder to incivility within the communities and subsequent occurrences of serious crime. Let's see, has that happened here? Of course it happened here. We have things that we see it every day. The broken window, the cars parked in the wrong position, loud mufflers, etc. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You will fight your battles where you draw the line, jaywalking or drive-by shooting. That statement was made by former City Councilman Don Klager, who served in Los Angeles SWAT Department. He came up and made this statement, and none of us could relate to it. We didn't drive-by shooting. What is a drive-by shooting? Guess what? Within 5 years, those words came absolutely true. So, what are the ordinances that are violated in this broken window concept? Noise, mufflers, roosters, dogs, ice cream trucks, cars on the lawn, semi-trucks parked in town, stray dogs, cars parked with their left wheel to the curb, speeding, people running stop signs, junkyard residents. Guy ran a stop sign on my way to breakfast this morning. He was at big truck for roads irrigation. I was gonna go, I was polite and tell him, hey, you're in a stop sign, bro. And, it was somebody that I knew very, very well. And I just said, hey, why don't you come to me? But, I will go down and if I see people.
4 minutes, sir.
4 minutes?
4 minutes left.
4 minutes left?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do I get time because it's taking time to switch the slides? Thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That was 2 minutes right there. There we go, there's another good man.
Next slide, please, Jackie.
Sunnyside has a questionable rating, on the internet. Just take a look. I mean, we're at some ratings out of a score of 100, we're 4. There's a lot more of those. I looked them up. I was challenged on that by being, he was a numbers man, a perception guy. How does that affect the perception of Sunnyside? Is Sunnyside a safe place to be living, or to visit, or to do business? I will tell you, back in 2011, people wouldn't even come here for a bridge game. It was pathetic. People were afraid to go to our iWatch meetings for retaliation against. This is coming. Believe me, it's coming here again, and we've got to take action. So if you don't believe me, look up the information yourself and decide what is your perception. And if you don't like the reputation that Sunnyside is getting, guess what? We can change it. Next slide. Violent crime, a victim is harmed by threatened with violence. Violent crimes include rape, sexual assault, robbery, assault, murder, and drive-by shootings. Okay, next slide. Oh, here we are. I get 2 more minutes now. Go ahead.
Go ahead and take the slide, Jackie.
So this is one of the things I pulled up, and that's up on that information there. 35% were over the national average, 51% in property crimes over the national average. I just pulled them up on the internet, and it's not favorable, believe me. Next slide. What is the pecking order of accountability? This is a huge item. Next one. So we, the people, this is your voters. They empower the city council. They put you in place here to do our bidding. So in turn, you have selected Elizabeth or whatever city manager to run this city, and she in turn hire or is in charge of all the staff people. Never, ever forget the city council people that you are the one in charge of policy. You're also accountable to make sure that policies are enacted. And we sometimes let that slide by. I was on council. I have to tell you, I wasn't a model person for accountability. I didn't know what I was doing. I think we had a pretty good deal. I thought I was responsible many times, but I did not face what you're facing right now. Next slide. So the council established policy. Next slide. The people have got to be behind you. They have got to be behind you. Where are they? They ain't here. Guess what? They haven't been here. I hate to say this, I haven't been here either. I should have been. I was trying to be, I wanted to be, I forgot. You know, excuses just. And so the empowerment goes on. You're empowering Elizabeth. Elizabeth empowers our police department. And next slide. And guess what? Right back to all those folks empowering the public to come forward and work together. So together, yes, we can. Our iWatch group has done this before, a rally in the community. We'll do it again. We absolutely need to work together on this. We've got a lot of things working against us. The police got handcuffed with some laws that were passed down by the legislature. How do we deal with that? Well, we have to make a plan. Am I saying that?
That was your 10 minutes, sir.
Do I get an award for that?
You did a fantastic job. I didn't think you were going to be able to pull it off.
No, thank you.
All right, so, council, thank you, Dr. Davis. Council, I was unable to provide everyone with a copy of this PowerPoint presentation prior to the meeting. The computer glitch and email that everybody else suffered, I got to suffer this weekend, so my apologies for that. So I want to give council an opportunity to ask questions, whether they wish to clarify or dig a little bit deeper. So I will go down the list. I think that would probably be the best. And I'm gonna start with Counselor Hart, if you have any questions. You are still muted now.
Not at this time.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Farmer.
Yes, I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's incumbent upon us as council members, we are the voice of the people, to stand behind and encourage our department heads and our city manager. We have to do something. We can't bury our head in the sand and pretend this isn't happening. Pretty soon it's going to be your neighborhood. I've had a drive-by in front of my business. Matter of fact, I've had 2 drive-bys in front of my business. This isn't fun, and it's, in my opinion, I don't think we've taken it serious enough. I think that we need to step up to the plate and be the driving force and work with the city staff and the police department and come up with ideas and solutions to this problem. It's not going to get better till we do. Going back as it was when it was bad a few years ago, it took a community to come together along with the police department and the members of the community and the council at that time. And we had a plan. We made it uncomfortable for the perpetrators not to want to stay in Sunnyside, and they moved. Some of them went to jail, and some of them moved. So I think it's incumbent upon us not to kick the can down the road any further. I think we need to step up the plate, and I think we need to do something.
You know, back, you reminded me of something, Mike, that, back when we had this deal in 2011, prior to the time that, the acting chief then put his strategic plan together, Mayor Restructure at the time, he and I were talking out in the street, and he said, you know, we're thinking about having the National Guard come in here. How bad it was. It was horrible. I applaud what you're saying, and what I'm saying, I thought to myself, I said, what would I do if all of a sudden, for some reason, I said, okay, you're gonna be city manager, what are you gonna do? Besides going and have an accident, I thought, no, I need outside help. This is way beyond the scope of my expertise. This is my dental practice often. And there are people out there, I know guys, I was telling Dean, he consults with police departments all around the country. He's an ex-SWAT member from Portland. Another guy we just talked with is Cindy Bird, board member for Richland School Board in Tri-Cities. He's was a sniper, he was a Green Beret, he's well-spoken, this guy is educated beyond my wildest.
Excuse me, Dr. Stevens, I don't mean to interrupt, but in the interest of time, and also, these are all items that we'll be talking about, in other meetings.
I have a few things I wanted to talk about in my life history.
Well, I understand, and, there will be time for that outside of the meeting, so. But I do thank you, Mr. Farmer. Mr. Hicks?
No questions at this time.
No questions. Mr. Beeler?
Yeah, I know last year we've had a lot of small crime problems in the city of Sunnyside, and and I think the end of this month, we have a new officer coming on board that's just gonna do nothing but concentrate on that. And I'm sure hoping that we can all bump heads and get something going a lot quicker than that. Things do take time, and I understand that, but we're gonna put this hot on the burner.
Councilor Ridley?
I agree with Mike. We need to get on this right away, and I don't know what the answer is right at the moment, but, we need to get on it.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilor Farmer. Actually, I agree with my colleagues in the sense that we do need to take some action. In 2010, we didn't have a public safety committee, and we had 16 shootings in the first 3 months that I was mayor. And we formed a public safety committee. We sent them with the charge of meeting with the manager and the police chief and coming up with a solution to address this problem. They came back with the gang suppression unit as well as other things that we were able to do on council in order to address this issue. We need to do the same exact thing. And I wholeheartedly support that. This should go immediately to the Public Safety Committee. You should hold a Public Safety Committee meeting, Mr. Mayor, and we should have them immediately start working with the manager and the chief of police to come up with a solution. I appreciate Dr. Stevens' presentation. I would caution him on using the broken window theory because it's been debunked by Northwestern University in 2019. That's just one item I would caution. But other than that, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Unfortunately, Northwestern University didn't consult me before they did that.
They don't always. All right, so, as far as my comments go, the deputy mayor mentioned the Public Safety Committee, and, I am a member of that, as is Mr. Farmer and Mr. Hicks. And we will be convening a meeting of the Public Safety Committee no later than this coming Monday. If we can get it in before, I need to talk to my colleagues beforehand and find a time that works the best for all of us. We are all alarmed by the rise in violent crime in the last while in the city of Sunnyside. And we very much want to find a solution. And we very much want to find a solution that is legal under current state law. As we know, the state law governing our police department has changed a little bit. And as we feel our way around and try to figure out the best ways to handle that, we want to make sure that we're staying within the law so that we're not in violation of the law, yet still enforcing the law against these violent crimes. We cannot tolerate violence, especially shootings in our city. It does not do a thing for the quality of life in the city of Sunnyside. And this is a great town. We can all come up with dozens upon dozens of examples of why and how this is a great place to live. However, news of shootings takes away from that. People in the community are scared, and rightfully so. And so, with that in mind, I'd like to give the city manager and perhaps the chief of police an opportunity to respond and maybe put your mind at ease. And Dr. Stevens, you may take a seat if you wish.
You know what?
You don't need to stand there the entire evening, no, sir.
My wife tells me the same thing.
Madam City Manager.
So we have taken very seriously the number of shootings, and as I shared at the last meeting, it hit very close to home as my niece was absolutely when that shooting happened. And if you see those pictures, she was sitting on the other side of that door full of holes. So this is not something that I take lightly. I'm going to let the police chief weigh in. He did start this weekend with many more patrols, and I will let him go into that. But we know that that's not sustainable. Our city can't afford a lot of overtime. It's not going to do anything in a long-term situation, but it is going to help us in a short-term situation. So with that, Al, if you would like to discuss or talk about what you did this weekend with your extra patrol.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Julia, you have your hand up.
Okay.
So go ahead, Chief.
Okay. Anyways, well, thank you for allowing me to weigh in here for just a moment. In response to many of these shootings, of course, we are having to take a lot into consideration. And, we reflect back on the days when in 2011, 2012, and we look at those, and obviously many of the tools that they used, and which was law, really, and how they use the law is no longer permissible today. So there are many of the things that were used back then that we can't use today. And so it wasn't a meeting about what we can't do, it's a meeting of what we can do. So about 5-6 hours later, we walk out of that room and basically devised a plan for the next couple of months. So much of what we did is we redirected, reorganized staffing to address issues. And there are a lot of things I won't get in detail with, just because some of those things they need to remain quiet for right now. But the reorganization and redirection of staffing, focused deterrent investigations are underway. We and to echo a little bit of the city manager's comment earlier about not being sustainable, it's not. She's right on a financial end. I mean, yeah, there is some issues there, no doubt about it. But more so, there is significant strain on the officer themselves. So the officers themselves are working 12 hours a day, and then they're expected to come out and pull extra duties due to the reorganization of staff. And they are burnt. I mean, they are being called for shooting after shooting, also to come out here and to work some other events that we have put together. And it takes a significant toll on you when you're working that many hours. And it's a very tough thing to mitigate. So we're trying to balance all of that, get our folks out here, but also get them rested. We don't want increases in use of forces, things of that nature, because they've just had enough. So staffing was one issue. We are very short throughout the agency. We do have one that has already left. We've got another one who is about to leave for a different agency. We have one who is about to leave to retirement. And so we definitely have some holes there to fill. The plan does include the utilization of corrections. Corrections has now been open just to Washington, or to the city of Sunnyside only. So we have expanded the limits there, working with the judge to determine how we're going to handle mental health subjects when we bring them in, and how we're going to furlough them. We have been, I've been in contact with federal partners. So the last two and a half weeks, I've been working with the feds, and as of, I guess the most recent was this afternoon, spending another hour and a half with them and partnering with them, and that's going to be a great partnership. So we do have operations underway, and again, those are operations that we're going to keep kind of close to our vest right now. And so a lot of things have started this past weekend, and going into the immediate future, extending throughout the spring here. So let's see how that goes. We also have partnered with the other agencies that are around us as best that we can, and we have been having collective meetings with all of the law enforcement leadership throughout the Yakima Valley, and basically discussing how it is that we can share resources. And when the time arrives, and some of the stuff is for preventative, and crime reduction efforts, and it's a good thing. It's great on paper, but when you have to actually apply it and you have to make the request, and they have to cut people loose, that's when it becomes problematic. And so we are doing the best that we can to stretch out as many of these operations in advance. And so then we can schedule personnel from other areas to come in to assist. So we've also have been, the street crimes unit is going to be taking effect on April 1st, and that will still be running relatively slow. We have to get them into training and all of that, but it doesn't mean that the personnel can't come out and begin their focused deterrence and start working on specific things and specific people throughout the city that tends to plague us a little bit. And some of those folks are obviously from outside the city that come to the city of Sunnyside to offend, and so that certainly hurts us, when they come in and do that. So we do have some things going, and I apologize for my vagueness here, but I don't want to let too many cats out of the bag here. There are other things that we have done to bolster and promote what we can do, and so that's really the name of the game. And we started that over the weekend, and this is the first weekend. I've got to say, and I'm going to knock on wood here. I hope you hear that. Knock on wood, not to jinx it, but this is the first weekend that I went Friday through Sunday without a single phone call of a shooting. And there are some reasons for that, no doubt about it. And a lot of that is due to the planning and some of the execution and the redirection of personnel and some of the things that we've got going on. So it's the data that we're looking at here. Obviously, we're not able to give you the best data right now. The WASPIC has not released or has not published the 2021 data, so we don't know how we compare to 2020 yet, statistically. And we're, the data that was produced earlier by Dr. Stevens, though I appreciate that, it does come from basically a sister website, and it's associated with crime grade, and so there's a lot there that we have to be careful of when looking at and using. But at the end of the day, what Dr. Stevens had talked about earlier is that we can't allow that. We just can't allow crime to run in the manner in which it has, and we understand that. But there are significant restrictions, and we're working within those restrictions and doing the best we can to attack this problem. And so we continue to work on that, and we have another meeting tomorrow, so I'll be in Yakima for that. And once again, it'll be more about what we are currently doing and what we currently have for planned for the immediate future. I'm sorry I took so long here. I'll stand for questions right now, but I just want to apologize in advance if I'm vague with any of your answers or with the answers that I provide to your questions.
Council members, are there any questions? I'm going to go down the list again and offering opportunities to ask questions. Sorry about the rest of the paper. And we're going to start at this one with Councilor Buehler.
No questions or comments.
And Councilor Hicks?
No questions at this time?
No questions. And Ms. Ripley?
No questions at this time.
Councilor Farmer?
I just want to say that the buck stops right here. Council is responsible for this. We're responsible for the safety of our community and for the well-being of our community, so the buck stops right here.
Thank you, Councilor Hart.
Was that me?
Councilor Hart?
Yes, I'm sorry. I was trying to unmute myself.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Councilor Hart.
Can't hear you, Julia.
Oops, I got muted again. Can you unmute me?
It doesn't show that you're muted, but we can't hear you at all.
Now?
It's starting to, can you turn it up?
I can't turn mine up. I'll talk a little louder. One of the things that I think that all of the punitive and types of actions that the police department and we already have ordinances in play. Some of those, as we've said earlier, some of them we're not able to use anymore, but there's certainly more that I know that the legislator is working on. Changes.
We can't really hear you, Councilor Hart. I'm sorry.
Where am I muted at?
You're not muted, man. We can hear you, but it's really, really low. I'm wondering if you could turn up your volume.
You muted yourself now.
Let me see, where's the volume here? Well, all I know for sure is that we need to have more than just punitive kinds of things going on. I think one of the things that Dr. Stevens said that I'm certainly think that in the 90s and the early 2000s was a big help and needs to come back is neighborhood watch. And we need to be doing that. And every couple of blocks, every couple of streets. I know people are afraid to come out and talk to each other. I'm afraid that they're going to have to get over that. If we want to know what's going on in our communities, we have to be the face. Me as Julia Hart homeowner, me as Julia Hart renter, living in a community, we have that obligation as well as the council. We're in charge of public safety policies, that sort of thing, giving support to our police department and so forth. but we also need to have less finger pointing and more cooperation among our community members. Does that make sense to you?
Perfect sense, ma'am.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
If I can,
Go ahead, Chief.
I'm sorry, if I can interject a little bit, I do want to thank Ms. Hart for that. Just real quick, is that's the other half of the plan. The other half of the plan is to also infuse the public, and they do have to accept the fact that activity like that is not. It's a community problem. It's not a policing problem. It does belong to the community, and the police are there to assist them in solving those issues. And that's where the authorities come in and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, the communities have to rally together, and there is nothing stronger than that. And so some of the things that we are introducing, one of which is to begin with. I'm going to host a town hall meeting, and I know those are always subjective because initially in the town hall meetings they become more of a blaming session for a while, and we have to kind of calm that down and why did you do this or why didn't you do that, and we have to kind of steady those waters a little bit. But they do have to understand the magnitude of what is going on and how current law is affecting our abilities to really stifle some of this stuff that's going on. And so with their help, and once they're armed with some knowledge and understanding that, okay, there are some restrictions, then we can turn that to what can be done. And the things that can be done are block watches. Neighborhood block watches are huge, provided that they're participated, right? So they do have to provide information. And again, the information oftentimes can't be immediately acted on because you only have so many officers on the street, but collectively you begin developing approaches to the problems that are plaguing neighborhoods. So we're taking it from a town hall perspective, and then from there we'll start breaking it down to more neighborhood style type of discussions that will be held throughout the city. So getting their support and also providing some education in how to become a professional witness is huge. And, that helps us because without the probable cause, we're pretty much dead in the water. Let's just face it. I mean, they've taken a lot of reasonable suspicion away, and those are things that solve crimes. And when you don't have reasonable suspicion, you're really, you're just hanging out there. You're having to wait till people are victimized entirely before you can do anything. And so, when we have people that understand what's going on and they become more active and more engaged in witnessing, it's going to really turn the tide, I think, as well. So that's the other part of what we're doing, and it is certainly part of the plan. But thank you for reminding me there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Suchi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues' comments, and I appreciate the chief's presentation or report as well. One thing I would ask the chief to do, as AWC past president, I'm always looking at the law, right, and how we can address the law. So, chief, if you're running up against state law that's giving you problems or hindering your ability to perform your job, I would appreciate during the Public Safety Committee if you identify those things to the committee members so that could be reported out to council, because I'll do my best to go to Olympia and fight on behalf of our city and all cities to make these changes if that's what's affecting your ability, chief, to perform your duties. And the other thing, Mr. Mayor, the COVID pandemic stopped us from having national night outs. Those are so important for our community. If we don't necessarily have to wait till National Night Out. If we want to put together a program in this community and get the community together, we might want to do that before National Night Out actually takes place.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mr. Stucci. I think that we'll do that for you for the next meeting coming up. We can certainly have those laws identified because they are certainly problematic, not only here. It's certainly not isolated to Sunnyside. It is definitely statewide that affects us. But but, you know, we are looking forward to, you know, Cinco de Mayo and things like that. Those are huge. And those are major things that the community has to have in order to join together. So I agree.
All right, yeah, and my comments along with that is just to remind everybody that the Public Safety Committee will be meeting here very shortly. We will report back to council, but we're going to do some work on it, and the chief's input is going to be invaluable to that. Almost everything is on the table. We're gonna look at whatever needs to be done, examine each thing from every angle that we possibly can, and come up with solutions as quickly as possible. One of the things that can be done, Dr. Stevens, as president of the iWatch, the Neighborhood Watch organization, you don't need council approval to expand iWatch. So to expand to other neighborhoods, to bring in more people, I know that's been challenging for you in the past. You've attempted that, you've looked at different ways to do that. But I encourage you to continue doing that, because as has been mentioned by others, neighborhood watch programs are absolutely vital in reducing crime. When the neighbors see and the neighbors report and keep an eye on each other, that's what makes a difference. And nobody wants to live in a dangerous community. So at this point, there may be more incentive to get something started after the recent activities. So this might be an ideal time for you to get your group out there and get the news out. So I encourage you to do that as well. I want to thank everybody for participating in this discussion this evening. I know it's a big topic, and I know technically we could have spent the entire meeting talking about this and nothing else. Unfortunately, we do have a rather extensive agenda to go through yet, so we're going to continue on. But please, rest assured that we're not going to let this item rest. We all live in this town, and we are all dealing with the reality of this violence. It affects all of us in one way or another. And so this is something that we're going to work on. All right, our next item of business, item B, Sunnyside, draft comprehensive plan. And I'm going to turn that over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor Bursma. Tonight we will be going over the comprehensive plan. Mike Shuttleworth has worked tirelessly on this for, what would you say, since day 2 of when he started. I would like to say he has promised to have it done before he retires at the end of this month.
I made that very clear to you in the season that he cannot retire unless it is done.
So I will turn it over to Mr. Shuttleworth.
Thank you, City Manager. So this is a process that's been going on for about over a year, and I first want to thank the Planning Commission. They have put hours and hours and hours on this. We've had several public meetings where there was a lot of discussion and a lot of comments made, some of them around residential units, some of them around commercial units, some of them around industrial units, and I think they've done it in helping me to put it in writing what they looked at. We did not do a full, rewrite of the comprehensive plan, because there's a lot of goals and a lot of policies in that plan that are still valid, and, still looking at it. What we did do is go through and we did eliminate some that we figured we had completed or were outdated or just didn't apply anymore. Most of them are the same. We added some where we needed to, and where we needed them is when we needed to address certain issues that the state law changed or court decisions have changed or wax has changed or, other things in the community have changed. A lot of the changes are the numbers, the number of housing units, the number of vacant houses, the number of houses that we need, our growth proportions, and since the last update, the county did revise our urban growth area and actually made it smaller. They did that all over the community. In a couple of years, we'll probably be coming back to the council asking to look at the comprehensive plan and the urban growth area, because the other changes we're growing. We're slowly annexing the growth area. Each year, we probably annex between 30 and 45 acres of the urban growth area at different times as we go through. In fact, hopefully, for you, before I leave, do the final ordinance on annexation. Next slide, Becky. Okay. The comprehensive plan, the reason we're doing this update is it's required by law. There's an RCW that's part of the Growth Management Act, which is the planning act that was done in the early nineties. I was just a young planner way back when, but it basically says that each community should look at their plan, review it, update it, and the numbers are needed or updated. And a lot of times, major updates happen when community is looking for new innovation or new large developments coming in, those types of things is when a lot of impacts. But we're looking at this from the standpoint of, let's keep this up to date. So when somebody does look at our plan, they can figure out where Sunnyside is, what we need, and what our goals are. I found a lot more investors and developers are looking at the comp plan because that's when I first started planning, we did these plans, put them on the shelf, and we may look at them 10 years later or something. We really under the Growth Management Act, we can't do it. If you want to do a rezone or if you want to do some major development, we got to make sure it's consistent with this plan document. So it does take on a lot more importance to the community, and it is the vision of the community. What are we going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years? And that's part of the whole element of Sunnyside, and you know, what it looks like today is not what it looked like 30 years ago when I moved here. I mean, different communities, different developments that have taken place, you know. Or I always refer to West Richland. When I first started with Benton County in West Richland, it was a small town of 4,000. Now it's, you know, about 15,000, and where there used to be pastures and horses, now there's houses everywhere. So the plan is to try and to look at those and make sure as we grow, we got a roadmap. So we've gone through this plan and looked at the data and changed it, updating. Like I say, a lot of the numbers have changed from when it was done back in 2007 and then slightly updated in 2013. So you'll see a lot of new numbers, a lot of things. You'll see a lot more in the transportation section. The transportation section has become a very important section of the plan, especially as we apply for dollars for projects and stuff. We need to have it in there, and we have to have that consistent with the 6-year transportation plan that the council approves every year. We want to make sure we're consistent and also provide some direction and numbers. A lot of the 6-year transportation plan looks at those roads that get federal funding or state funding. Majority of the city roads do not. The residential streets, unless they're certain classifications, they don't get any funding, and they tend to be the last ones that we spend money on just because roads are expensive. I forget what it is, $1 million a mile or something, probably an old number given today's fuel prices. So there'll be a lot in there. Next slide, please. So this is the 2006 cover, and 2022 cover is plain, but we'll probably do something different on the front once it's adopted. The important stuff on this is make sure we have the adoption number, date, and the ordinance that makes it an adoption. We do have to do an ordinance about the comprehensive plan. We want to see a copy of that ordinance and make sure we finish the process. Started. Pretty well covered this slide already, but it's an update required by law, and they say it's every 7 years, but it could be 5 years, depending on the legislators, whatever they feel like in a certain zone, so they may do it. And the next time we update will be 2026. Our current RCW, they may change. And county will probably about, like I say, a year before that will come from a important portion of the plan involved in that process and work with the county on bringing us the numbers. So that's why in this plan the numbers are important. It's all population projections and what our population projections. I have been working with OFM and census to kind of really look at that, because I think our numbers on housing units and stuff are a little low, but those are the numbers they give us. We can't, going out and do a full count of the community, which would take a lot of time and very. Okay, next slide, please. The comprehensive plan is made up of chapters, usually referred to as elements. We have a physical character element, a land use element, a capital facilities element, transportation element, housing, utilities, economic development element, and then administrative element. The administrative element is basically saying, when will we update this and how will we update this? Under the current RCW, we can only update our comprehensive plan once a year. So if somebody comes in June and wants to make a zone change for something, they will have to wait until January. We can take their application, but we can't do anything with it, because that way, if we do it once a year, everybody has a chance to see what's going on, and we can see the overall impact of all these actions, as opposed to doing them one at a time and not really getting a clear picture. But next slide. So the physical character element basically looks at critical areas, wetlands, floodplain, steep slopes, those types of things. The nice thing about it is we don't have a lot of those. We do have some wetlands out there, and Maple Grove and on the highway, but other than that, there really is not a lot of critical areas within the city. We don't have a river, we don't have a creek. Most of our creeks that are in town are basically drained for irrigation districts, and they're kind of exempt. So what we did with this chapter is we actually cut it down. We got 2 pages on floodplain, and floodplain, so why have 2 pages? We just said there's no floodplain. So while it's 100 and some pages, 70 pages long, we cut it down some. So I always like B and E. Find something in a document, but just to address everything in state wants us to address, it does take that many. Next slide. The land use element and the transportation element are probably the 2 big things in the comprehensive. Land use element is, what are we doing with the future use of our land? Where are we projecting? Where's our industrial going to go? The thing about residential is it's all about the projections. We have projection numbers and say we have plenty of acreage and flooding for housing. And under this plan, we do have more than enough for residential growth. We just have to start promoting the residential growth. Industrial really just comes along with the residential. There's no really directions in state law on how to do industrial. And then commercial, we do have that based on population. So we have to really justify those areas. And I think looking at makeup of the community, we're pretty much 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Layout, because you have to have all 3. You have to have places to live, you have to have places for people to work and to buy. And I think the community has that, some of it spread out, but I think and we do have quite a bit of future land for industrial and commercial use. Next slide. Capital facility element, so this is looking at buildings. The old plan had a lot of information out of some of the plans, and we've basically taken that out, like the other plan. So the city is required to do a sewer comprehensive plan, a water comprehensive plan, the transportation plan, and we have repeated a lot of that information. The issue we run into is do this plan this year, but then another time we do 2 years of information and old information. So a lot of that in capital facilities, we're referencing those other plans for water, sewer, that kind of stuff, because those are probably more consistent and more information than I could ever put in the capital facility plan. With that being said, we do talk about level of services for government in there, and we do talk more about the buildings of the museum and the swimming pool, those types of things. Start looking. One of my suggestions in the list that I talked about, is every year as part of the budget process, do a capital facility budget also, so you can kind of look at over the next 6 years, however we want to spend our money. If you have a public hearing on that, then it's automatically part of the comprehensive plan, so if funding comes along, you say, yes, it's in our comprehensive plan, it's a lot of communities do that, and that way, you're more up to date. A lot of times in the comp plan, the capital facility element gets forgotten. People don't go in there every year and say it like they should, and it's really important they do, so that those fundings come around. Next slide, Jackie.
Mike, can you speak into the microphone a little bit more? It like cuts off on my end.
Oh, I'm right there, okay, is that better?
Much better.
Okay. So the next one is the transportation element, and as I say, there's a lot of changes we made in there, a lot of information. We're talking about level of services, so we're looking at level of service C for most roads and then D for intersections. That's kind of consistent with what the county and the rest of the communities are doing. When we went through the CEQA processes with this, Department of Transportation had some changes they wanted us to do to the plan that was related to the interchange over there by the theater, because we recently did a traffic study for a development, and it said at a certain point that intersection may have issues that need to be improved, and they wanted that addressed in there, so if we had some big developments coming in, they would be aware that, oh, you might have to help with improvements there. And then on 241, hopefully I get the right number, accidents seem to be more prevalent on that, and they wanted that kind of noted in the plan so that people knew improvements may be needed for that corridor. And that, what that does is that helps us when we go to our state legislators and say, yeah, we need to get some money for this interchange, and we need to so we can continue economic development. Next slide. Okay, this again is about transportation. As I said, that's kind of a big element when we look at it, because that is the backbone for land use. We don't have the roads, we don't have the land use that we can put on lots. Okay, next one. And this is the housing element. This is looking at housing for all economic levels. So basically, you know, all the way from housing for low income to housing for higher income, trying to come up with a plan so we can look at all of those, because we need all of those. If we all have all low income housing, we don't have the revenue to keep up the roads and stuff. So we have to have all of the things. This year, or last year, legislators did pass, and I actually am on a committee now to look at housing for homelessness and transitional housing. They're now requiring our community to look at that as part of the comprehensive plan process. But when I talked to Commerce, we didn't have to do that because we don't have the numbers, because Commerce will have to give us the numbers that we have the plan for. But I did in there kind of talk about that coming in the future, and we'll probably, you know, next time we update, we'll probably have to address that. Okay, next one. Next slide, Jackie. So the next element is utility element, and this is another one that's probably been shrunk down because we do refer to these other plans for the utilities. Most of the changes in here were actually changes of the names and addresses and stuff of utility companies. Because the ones that were here in 2007 have either been bought, sold, or changed their names. You know, we have CenturyLink now, but back then it was, I don't know if you remember United Telephone. So yeah, it's been changed quite a few. So we made those updates, and then we talked a little bit about what we need to see in the future to keep economic development continuing. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the economic development element, which kind of talks about policies and programs to foster economic growth and development and address the future. So this is where we kind of look at to make sure well-rounded so that we have all those, we can put houses in for those big developments that come in and provide for industrial developments with decent wages and stuff, so that's the kind of that section that looks at the numbers and gives people some direction. So, next slide, Becky. So this is administration element, as I said before, is for, when we're gonna update the plan and make it, so basically what this says is in January every year we'll take applications. In February, the planning commission will start looking at it, probably the council will look at it in March and April. That's kind of what the process will be for updating each year, so if somebody has some changes they wanna make, most of the changes we'll probably see is to the land use map, or somebody, we have it residential and they wanna do commercial or something. Okay. Next slide, Jackie. So the planning commission has spent the last year reviewing this document, making changes and reviewing changes that were proposed to them. The meetings were open to the public. We did have, 3 or 4 meetings where we did have probably 10 to 15 people attend. Most of them were on the land use section. The planning commission did conduct a public hearing on February 8th on it. And then after considering all the comments and testimony, they have made a recommendation to the city council to approve the updated comprehensive plan. Next slide, thank you. So now it's being moved to the council. There's a workshop to kind of go over it and answer any questions the council has on the draft. After that, next Monday, we'll have a public hearing where the council will take public testimony. We have put a notice in the paper for that. And then after that, they will discuss and decide whether to approve, modify, or change it. And then we will bring an ordinance to you on the March 28th meeting for your final approval. The attorney has found a section that I missed that basically says when I do the speed up, it'll wait 60 days because normally you wait 60 days from the time you notify commerce, but evidently things in our CW for a comp plan that we have to wait 60 days on that also. So that's the reason we're going to do that. That's my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. I admire the work you guys have done on that. All right, so council members, opportunity for you to ask questions, and we're going to begin with Councilor Ripley.
No questions or comments at this time.
Councilor Beeler.
Just one question. Where can somebody go to get all the in-depth information of everything that you've discussed here, other than just the preliminary that we have here?
When you talk about it, you mean the information we use for the numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, I got a file about this thick that if somebody wants to look at, they're more than welcome to. Basically, a lot of the data comes, there's a lot of different sources, like the Office of Financial Management at the state level gives us projections. Recent census has saying, there's probably 100 different documents that pulls information from. I wasn't going to look at it.
I thank you for all the work you've done.
Deputy Mayor Sushi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No questions or comments at this time. I'm sure I will have questions though, and I'll contact planning when I do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Hicks.
My only question is, so you said they shrink our urban growth area?
Yes.
By how much?
I don't have the number in front of me, but I know there was a large chunk east of the, or west of town that they took out.
I believe Jamie reported 197 acres they took back from our GMA. Isn't that correct?
I believe that's probably the number, yeah.
No question I have.
Okay, Mr. Farmer.
It wasn't a quick read, that's for sure. I appreciate the work that you have done and the planning commission has done on this. It's been a lot of work and a lot of time spent on it. I haven't been able to digest it enough. I think after the public hearing and maybe some public comments, I might have some comments at that time.
Councilor Hart.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. I don't actually have any comments or any questions at this time. Thank you very much for the amount of effort, and to the planning commission as well, putting into this document. I'm sure it's going to serve us well. And as my peers have said tonight, it was not an easy read. It requires a little bit of in-depth thinking that my brain just didn't want to do today. But nonetheless, I think that we'll have a few more things to address once we have the public hearing and have time to digest this a little bit better. But in the meantime, kudos to you and your for the work that you've done on it and all of the updating that needed to be done. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, I just had a couple of comments too. I remember when I bought my first house, it was up on Harrison Hill, and I refinanced it, and the bank required that I go through an examination. They had to send an inspector out to find out if I was in a floodplain, and I laughed, but it was still a $50 charge that they were able to charge me because it was required. I told them at the time, if that's in a floodplain, those are. But I do appreciate that Sunnyside finally able to say, yeah, we don't have a floodplain in the city of Sunnyside, so that will solve some problems for some people. And I remember when we did lose that urban growth area there to the west of town, and I was disappointed when that happened. What is the prospect of getting that back?
I think at the next update, the city should be prepared with the numbers and stuff. I think we will have more population numbers and more up-to-date numbers that we can. We weren't the only community that got reduced. There was, and I won't say so, and we got it through to do that. And I know that the planning commission or planning department of the county's been talking to us a little bit about changes that we may need in the future. They usually start a couple, 3 years before they actually start having public hearings on it to look at those.
That area is a natural area for the city to grow, and I'd like to see that returned to us so that we can do some future planning. And again,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, if I might just add real quickly, in the argument when they took the 197 acres away from us in the GMA, the argument was that we needed to provide a study to them on whether or not we could provide services to those areas. The problem is that we're already providing services to those areas. So it makes no sense why we would have to do that and spend $250,000. That's what would happen to us back in 2010, 2011. I don't know if the county commissioners, we've got brand new county commissioners now. I don't know how they feel about growth management right now.
Thank you for those comments, sir. You're correct. All right. Further questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, thank you, sir, for your report and for your hard work. Our next item is compensation restructure. Madam City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Grossman. We came to you a few workshops ago about compensation study, and Jameson and I sat down and really took a hard look at whether we hire out for this service or if it could be conducted in-house. And in the interest of our city and saving money, we decided that Jameson could do the work. She had the experience, and she is new, so it wasn't feeling so much like I'm trying to get a bigger salary for myself, if that makes sense. So she did a very excellent job of, and let's say thorough, of getting all of this information pulled together. And so I'm gonna turn it over to her and let her take the glory in what she has accomplished for us.
Thank you very much, Ms. City Manager. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. I think, there we go. Hopefully you should be seeing the first slide there, which is the factors that impact the salary, a fair salary structure, correct?
Correct, but could you make it a little bit larger for those of us online?
Oh yeah, sorry. Let me put it on a different screen here. One second. Well, I'll be dinged. It's not letting me. All right, let me do it this way. I thought I got this problem fixed after I had such an issue last time with you guys. So sorry about that.
You got multiple monitors. There's usually a toggle. That
I know it's
use multiple monitors. I've been there.
all right. So wait, so where's the toggle to put it on a different monitor?
I believe it's up where it says view. Doesn't say use multiple monitors.
Okay, let me see. Is that better? Oh wait, you don't see it yet. Sorry, just a second. Let me put it through. Now I think it'll be much better for you guys. Just a sec. Thank you, Mr. Restucci.
No worries, man.
How's that?
Oh, much better. Much better.
Yeah.
Much better. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So, let me do this too. All right. So, factors that, let me go back. Factors that impact a fair structure. This is basically part 2, sorry, to kind of what we discussed at the last study session, which was doing the study citywide to look at our compensation. Was it fair? Was it equitable? Did it make sense that we needed to make changes? And following that study, we did discover that there are a lot of areas with city compensation that there was room to have improvements be made that would probably have a positive effect on our recruitment efforts and also a positive effect on city staff and their feelings of equity in their pay. So with that information, I just wanted to kind of go over with you sort of what goes into making a fair wage structure. So the first few slides here, I'm going to just kind of talk about what the goals should be, and then we'll take a look at how we can apply those goals to what we have going on here in the city. So let's see. Factors that impact a fair wage structure are obviously, we want to encourage our employees to take on more job responsibilities and compensate them accordingly. So, hold on one second. I feel out of sorts right now. So wage scales that encourage growth are very important. Are we able to motivate employees to take on more responsibility without sacrificing their level of pay? Salaries that are in line with the job market. Do employees feel that their salaries are similar to people that are getting paid to do similar jobs? Can the city attract qualified candidates for our open positions without losing services or efficiency to city operations? Making it just
slide for the audience.
What was that?
You're still on the compensation restructure.
Change the slide.
Oh. Now am I there? Sorry about that. It's, you know what it is, Elizabeth? It's this stupid tall monitor. I can't figure out how to get it off of here. All right. So sorry, back to here, but this is what I'm going over. So the wage scales that encourage growth, salaries that are in line with the job market, and then making adjustments that don't negatively impact our currently fairly paid staff. So is there a way to make adjustments that don't take wages away from some of our staff that are already being fairly compensated? And then also, obviously, the biggie is controlling the costs, making sure that we can afford to pay people what they should be paid. And can we do this in perpetuity? Is this something that we can do, not with one-time revenues, but can we put practices into place where we are collecting enough revenue to keep these salaries up over time and continue to be able to match what's going on in the market? So just to discuss a few different things about structuring salaries. The first thing is understanding step increases. So there's step increases are typically used for hourly paid jobs that qualify for overtime. And most salary ranges, whether step increase or merit, usually have a range between 20 to 25% between the top and the bottom of the scale. The philosophy for step increases is that these are typically frontline staff that have on-the-job training and a learning curve from entry level to being proficient. You would assume that after 5 years, these employees can typically be considered experts at their job and will have mastered the skills required to perform. Sometimes the steps may have larger or smaller increases due to the job market for their particular skill set. And steps usually allow the city to make small changes to keep up with the market. So I have an example up here for you of what step increases really look like. So your first year employee, we'll just say gets paid $1,500 twice a month. After their first year, they're no longer brand new. They've picked up some skills, but they're not an expert yet. They get that 5% increase. And then for the next couple of years, 5% as they pick up more skills. Once they enter their 5th year, you expect this person to be proficient at their job. So they should have all the skills they need to complete all aspects of the job at this point. So they are getting paid the regular high market value for this job. Next are merit wage ranges. So typically merit wage ranges are for expert level jobs. So these are going to be your managers, your directors, people who are stepping into a job that they're expected to have all the qualifications to take on. The merit range usually goes from the low end of the market to the high end of the market, and those increases that may be provided will be based on performance or simply just time in the position. A lot of times they're used to reward people that are exceeding the minimum requirement, and the wage still stays within the market but moves up towards the higher end of the market. And merit ranges are also easily manipulated to make adjustments to the market. So you can shift the entire range, you can narrow the range, or you can broaden the range in response to changes with the market, often without making big changes to the actual pay that you're paying people. So you can still stay where you need to be without having to make big jumps in salary. Okay, and then this is the one where we've kind of gotten ourselves into a bit of trouble. These are the hierarchical intervals. So promotional intervals need to be set in such a way to encourage motivated employees to continue in their development. And they also need to allow for external recruitment when needed. So when we have a job out on the market, we need to be able to have qualified staff apply for it. For internal candidates, this typically means that they need to be making more than they were making before in the lower responsibility job. So for an hourly job that goes to another hourly job, it's easy for you to say a 5% increase would cover that bump in responsibility. So it'd basically be like adding another step to their range, right? And then their overtime would get paid to compensate for that. However, when you look at moving an employee from an hourly job to a salary job, you do typically need to provide for a larger increase to account for overtime that hourly employees were getting when they were qualified for it. So you usually need to have at least a 10% increase between an hourly and a salary job. So going from a non-exempt to an exempt job, because they're no longer taking home any overtime. And then when you're within salary to a salary job, the same, you can go back to a smaller increase because it's the full wage is captured in their actual normal pay. So if you look at the different jobs I have listed here, you can see like the frontline and the working lead job, those would be considered hourly jobs where these employees may pick up a couple of hours of overtime every week or every couple weeks or something. And then when you jump up to that supervisor or manager level, that person is going to be straight salary. So they may be working more than 40 hours every week, likely are, but they will not be increasing their pay to accommodate for that. So in the example that's listed here, like if our frontline employee was making the top end of their scale, $1,800, and they wanted to get a promotion to go to an open position for a lead. If they were making more than, or if they were averaging more than about 2 hours per week of overtime, you would have to, you would still be able to just give them a 5% increase because the higher level job still has overtime. So but however, when you go from the working lead to the supervisor job, if you just went 5% up and they typically average 2 hours of overtime, you have to jump at least 10% up to cover for that difference. So in other words, like somebody at the top end of the working lead scale, right there, I think their annual pay would be about $58,000. And the starting scale for that supervisor manager, even at 10%, is about $59,000. So with that overtime built in, you have to provide enough of a interval to cover for that if you allow overtime for those positions. And historically for Sunnyside, our employees do get overtime. So that is one of the reasons, for an example, that we've had a very difficult time recruiting for our commander job in the police department, because the eligible employees who have the experience are currently working as sergeants, and they're getting a lot of overtime hours. So those overtime hours, compensated at time and a half, are eating up the entire interval and halfway through the commander scale. So we can't pay somebody enough as a commander to compensate for the salary that they're making as a sergeant. This is kind of complicated, so if somebody has a question, and I know I'm kind of all over the place, I just wrote my notes today, sorry. So if somebody has a question, I'd be happy to answer anything right now.
Council members, are there any questions at this time?
Mr. Mayor, just one quick one. Ms. Horner, how does this play into the current CBAs that we have right now?
So all of this would, if we did make adjustments, we would have to go to the unions to negotiate these adjustments. I think the goal right now is to come up with a plan, check and see if we could afford it, and then at that point, go to the unions. In this restructure proposal, we did not reduce any salaries from their current levels. So the likelihood that we would get pushback from the unions is low, but not unheard of, because we did narrow some of the scopes of the ranges. And so we may have some questions there, but because we didn't reduce any wages, and in fact, most often did increase the scale, it should be okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You may proceed, Ms. Horner.
All righty. This is sort of the structure that I looked at when looking at this. How do our salaries look? How can we adjust them to the market and ensure that the ranges and that the intervals are appropriate to continue to have people that want to work for promotions, have our open positions be filled, and still not bankrupt the city? So the first thing that I looked at was just matching the market. And some of the departments, it was pretty easy to do that. The Public Works Department was pretty much across the board, as you'll see in a later slide, underpaid. And the intervals between those ranges for frontline to supervisor were broad enough that that increasing to the market level did not impact the promotional interval in a way that would discourage people from taking on responsibility. However, the police department, as you can see here, as I was just talking about with sergeants and commanders, if we were to adjust these to the market, our sergeant level and our police commander level would still have an interval of less than 5%. And that's because the market doesn't typically respond as quickly for a department-wide structure, but like police officers right now and sergeants are in high need. It's a supply and demand issue, right? So there's a huge need for police frontline personnel. So those wages are going up and up and up. And the leadership positions so far haven't risen at the same rate. So if we adjusted just strictly to market, we're still going to run into the same issue that we have currently. So it's not going to help us. It does keep the jobs competitive, and it does ensure that people are being paid what they're being paid in other cities, but it doesn't help us with our recruitment and promotion issues. So then the next thing was looking at adjusting for the steps, the ranges, and the intervals. So to do this, we started from the bottom, made sure that we were paying our frontline employees within the market, and then built in all of those intervals as they as the standard would hold them. Obviously, this quickly, like in the police department, you can see here, quickly threw us way over what we can afford to pay. We can't, unfortunately, afford to pay our police chief $175,000 per year at this time. So, and then you think that you have to pay the city manager more. And so it's a big, it's a ball rolling downhill. It gets bigger and bigger as it goes. So we had to kind of throw that out and come up with a compromised plan that matches the market and is able to provide intervals between promotional positions, but still control the upper level costs. So the way that we did this is we started from the frontline positions, the hourly positions that provide overtime, and we went through and made sure that we were giving 5% step increases for each of those positions with 5 steps. And aside from one job, I think all of the hourly jobs did provide steps that were close to that 5% mark. So that was not too difficult. We started running into issues when it came to those intervals, those promotional intervals. So the way that we compensated for that was to narrow the, as I said, narrow the range. So instead of providing a range for merit of between 20 and 25%, which is standard, we decreased those down in some cases to 10 and 5%, so that there's still promotional movement available, but that the salaried exempt employees are stuck in a much narrower 5% box sometimes. So this is kind of what it looks like. So as you can see, this is the police department. So if you start at the very right-hand side, this is our police support, administrative assistants, receptionists, then communication, corrections, and police support. And then our actual police officers, sergeants, commander, and chief are on the left. So the police officers and the sergeants are hourly employees, and they maintained the 5% steps, five steps with 5% differences between them. However, the commander range, we had to narrow down to, let me look here at my notes, to 5%. So basically the amount shown there is the midpoint that's shown there. It can only go 2% over or under. So it's pretty much that's the wage. And then there is a 10%, interval between the sergeant and the commander, but then there's only a 5% interval between the commander and the chief. And that was the only way that we could keep the executive level salaries affordable to the city. This is probably not sustainable for a long period of time, but because they are merit range, they are easy to adjust upwards or downwards depending on how the market goes. But after 3 or 4 years, if you keep your staff stuck in a 5% bubble, they're not going to feel as rewarded for the time spent in the position. So you'll run into some trouble there. Here is the fire department, pretty much the same. I know it looks like the firefighter and captain went up, but as I said before, I did throw in some of the incentives that they get on top of their hourly wage. And I kind of redid that a little this time. And then I did update the interval between firefighters and captains because it was not adequate. And that did push the assistant chief up. But same here, the assistant chief and the fire chief only have a 5% range. And then the public works department, this was, like I say, this is our easiest one because all of the salaries were a little low and it was easy to bring them up to market value. And there was still plenty of room for a adequate interval. So this is the prettiest one in my opinion. It looks the most like standard. And then the building department as well. Here. And here's the administration and clerical staff. And I did include the city manager on this one just so you can see the step from administrative services director to city manager, but I have everything on the executives on the next one. So you can see that. The other thing that the city manager was pretty adamant about was that she wanted to make sure that the director level positions all received the same level of pay. Certain director level jobs have the market pushes them higher or lower, but the city manager was adamant that she thought that all of the director level positions carried the same level of responsibility and should be similarly compensated. So while they all show even right there, there is a 5% difference. So they're not all going to make the same salary necessarily, but right now it would be stuck within 5% in that range. And that is all I have for you today. The next meeting that I get to with this, we'll talk about revenue and cost and things like that. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to discuss this. If you feel that we're on the right track, if you have any issues before I get too much further down the rabbit hole here.
All right, thank you, Ms. Warner. And we're going to go down the list and give council members an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. We're going to start with Councilor Beeler.
On something like the Public Works Department, you said we're extremely low. Rather than doing the 5%, wouldn't we just bump that up and slowly bring them up rather than just give them all raises right off the bat? Or
and I'm sorry, maybe I should have said more clearly. These bar graphs show just the midpoint of each range. And so not every employee is going to get a 5% off the bat. And we may have to go into this process incrementally. We may not be able to rectify this entire problem in one fell swoop. So it might be that we need to put a plan into place to increase 2% over, the next 3 or 4 years to get up to this point. But at this point, I just want to make sure I'm presenting something to you that where you can see that those blue lines, those comparable averages are much closer to where our yellow lines were, and that we think we might be able to feasibly afford it.
Thank you.
Councilor Hicks.
I like the presentation. The only problem I see is it's sustainable.
Right.
That was mentioned in the presentation, and you are 100% correct in my opinion as well. So sustainability has got to be the big question to figure out how we can do this. So,
yep.
Deputy Mayor Sushi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Warner, could you go back a few slides? No, actually, I guess going forward then. I was looking for the department heads again.
Sure.
Okay, so 2 things. One, I noticed that we have a community development director, which we don't have on the books right now. And I remember the interim city manager sending an email to council about wanting to create or not fill the public works supervisor position and create a community development director's position. Mm-hmm. But as I'll remind council and the manager, it's the council who creates the organizational structure of the city. So before we start including directors that we don't have, I want to be mindful of that. And I also want to remind council that many years ago, we did have a community development director. and council felt that we didn't have enough growth in the city to support a department head level position for planning. So other than that, I'm okay with the presentation. I am concerned about the CBAs. I've dealt with unions for many years, and anytime you make changes, you definitely get pushback. So I'd be mindful of that as well. Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor.
And just to give take a moment to respond on the community development director. It was in the previous presentation as well, and not because I assumed it was going to be there, but it was difficult for me to, oops, where'd the building department go? It was difficult for me to find comparables to our planning supervisor position. So when I initially did the salary comparisons, I threw in the community development director because it gave me a sort of understanding point of where a director level position would be for that, and allowed me to adjust sort of the job descriptions downward from there. And so I could have, I apologize, I could have left it off of there. And that all happened prior to us even approaching this new job. So I do apologize for the confusion that caused.
Oh, and no worries. I didn't expect an apology or anything of that nature. I'm just making my fellow council members aware. That's all.
Absolutely.
Council Farmer.
I do have some questions. I think this is going to have to soak in a little bit. But the thoughts that I had during this presentation was I would like a job description of each one of our employees that are in a management position. And I want to know what they do, how many people each one of them supervises. I think sometimes we become more management heavy than we are worker heavy. So I would like some more information on exactly what each supervisor is in charge of and how many people he's in charge of or they are in charge of.
Yeah, I can definitely provide that to you. And I'm not sure if you recall, the city manager mentioned probably 2 months ago. I am actually sort of redoing the format of our job descriptions and trying to get things more standardized. And once I get to the point in that project where I'm ready to present those to you guys for change, you do approve the job descriptions. So at that point, I would like to be able to bring all of the job descriptions to you guys for your approval, to make sure that you are good with them and any updates that we might be making. But I can gladly get you some of those management ones sooner if you would like to see those.
Thank you. Councilor Ripley.
No questions or comments right now.
And Councilor Hart.
I think it's important for us to remember that we are trying to hire people who are quality folks, and quality folks require adequate compensation and proof that there will be compensated for their talents, for the work that they do. I think that we don't want to I think that we're on the right track here with what Ms. Horner is working on. I think it's difficult. I see lots of problems, but I think we're headed in the right direction here. Thank you.
Thank you. So as my comments go, I think this is a worthy task, and it's important that we go through this. I think as you've already noticed with the work we've done for the police department, that there are some potential problems in bringing this all together. And you also mentioned that, sustainability is a question. And as I said earlier, that is something that's got to be part of this entire thought process. I would love to pay every employee in the city of Sunnyside just above what the standard, or pay them well. I want to retain our good workers. I want to be able to attract good workers, good employees for every level of employment. But we do have to commit to the fact that we want them to stay for 20 or 30 years. And cost of living continues to go up, and they're going to want a cost of living increase. And when are we going to bankrupt ourselves if we try to do all of that? So you've got a big task ahead of you still. I appreciate your report. It was extremely interesting. It's a lot to digest. I may be able to look at other stuff and come back and argue with you on a couple of things, but, it's still an awful lot of information to put in my head. And I look forward to your next phase on this, hearing what you're coming up with. So thank you for the work that you're doing on this. This is a big job.
No problem, and I'm always available in my office for arguments. I do like to argue every now and then, so I'll take you on.
So do I, so.
Mr. Mayor?
All right, yes, sir.
If I could have one more alibi with Ms. Horner. Ms. Horner, just so you know, I don't know if you remember this or not, because you were probably in the city of Toppenish. But the Daily Sun News has published every salary of every employee in the city, on more than one occasion, actually. And we've heard from the citizens that our staff is paid well. So I just want every council to be mindful of that. You will need to be able to defend this to the people.
I completely agree with you, and I actually had some notes. I didn't use my notes as much as I wanted to, and I'm sure I didn't say some things, but one of the things that I think is very important as well, and maybe because I'm in finance as a fiduciary for the funds of the public funds, basically, these monies belong to the people. I agree with you. I want you to know that wholeheartedly I'm coming from that aspect, and I do not want to present anything that I feel like would not be defensible.
That's great. I love to
Good
hear
job.
that. Thank you.
Good job, good job, good job.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments before we move on to the next item? Hearing none. Our next item, item D, additional staffing requests. Madam City Manager.
So tonight has been the Jamie Horner show, so I will let her continue with this. And if you notice, my background has changed. My laptop decided to die, and I don't want to crawl on the floor to plug in, so I'm now on my phone.
All right, Ms. Horner.
All right, so this has come about based on feedback from a couple of different departments about needs that they have, namely the recreation department and the police department. We know we're short-staffed in police as it is. And earlier this year, well, actually, when you passed the 2022 budget, you had approved them to rehire the receptionist 2 position in the police department. And since they have taken on the Toppenish dispatch, they have decided that their need is, they have a more excessive need in the dispatch department than they did in that reception area. So the police department approached me and said, do you think the council would go for swapping this out for a dispatch supervisor? And so that's what they want to do for that one. So they want to basically take that police receptionist 2 back off the table and replace it with another police support supervisor. As you can see in the chart below, and I kind of skipped over the community development director. I'll go back to that one. But the police support supervisor,
You're not sharing your screen, ma'am.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought she had the, I can share mine. I thought she had the agenda up there.
I can go back. I have it open
Oh,
here.
it's okay. I have it right here. There we go. Can you guys see it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, so the cost, including benefits, of the police receptionist is about $97,000. And the cost of a police support supervisor would be closer to $130,000 with benefits. So the difference there is $32,000. And they're hoping that we can get approval to move forward with bringing that to you at for a budget amendment at a city council meeting. The next position would be adding a part-time recreation receptionist. I know that recreation is a big push for you guys, which I think is great. And I think Gwen is very excited to be doing the work. Unfortunately, because she is so amazing, in my opinion, and has all these plans going on to start programs and do the day camp, finding time for her to be sitting in the community center and taking reservations for parks and things like that, and actually receipting in registrations for programs and for pool rentals and stuff. She would like to know if we can add a part-time recreation receptionist. So this would be a 15-hour job or 15-hour a week job, probably in the range of $15 to $16 an hour, in the afternoons, 1 to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, basically to cover the community center hours. And so the total cost on that, it wouldn't be eligible for health insurance and it wouldn't be eligible for retirement. The total cost on that would be approximately $16,000. And then we have talked about IT services, and at the last meeting, Mr. Restucci, we mentioned that we were thinking about going out for an RFQ for these services. With the loss of Grady now as well, it is an opportunity if we would like to take back having in-house IT services and actually hire our own employees. And we could change the contract that we have with Yakima County right now so that they can still provide the services that they provide and the infrastructure that they provide, but that we would have our own staff. And we really need 2 people instead of 1.5 people, which is what the county is providing us right now. So in looking at that, it would probably cost to pull that amount out of the Yakima County contract, take it over ourselves, and add that extra half a person would be about $57,000, I believe. So those are the 3. In addition to the community service or the community development supervisor changing to a community and economic development director. And the reason that we talked about having this is because we are experiencing a time of growth right now. And we are also looking for ways to increase economic operations in our city. Basically, we are looking for an employee that would be able to better interface with the port and with other organizations for community development, and that be more part of their core job in addition to the planning. So this is what we put our heads together and we sort of came up with this job that could help bring business in addition to doing the planning functions for right now. And it sounds like you used to have that job. So the difference in salary and benefits would be about $16,000 if we were to change that job from one to the other. And I did attach a couple of sample job descriptions for you guys to look at in your packet. I don't know if you want me to take time to go over those with you now or want to look at them on your own. But I would like to know how you guys feel and if you would like us to move forward with creating any or all of these positions.
Council members, I'm going to give each an opportunity to ask questions or make comments. We'll start with Councilor Ripley.
No questions or comments at this time.
Councilor Hart.
I'm certainly, oh gosh, let me check if I'm unmuted here.
You're good.
You are not.
Okay. I'm really of the opinion that we do need to have someone in the Parks and Rec. It can't be a one-man show or one-woman show. So we do need to have somebody over there to do those reservations, to allow the director to go out and do the things that she's doing. And she's doing a great job. I'm really impressed with that program. I think we need somebody to be her sidekick over there. I think coming into the, I believe the dispatch switch from a receptionist to a dispatch person. I think that's really important, seeing as how we are doing more with the Toppenish dispatching. So I'm in favor of that. Of course, I know we got to figure out where all this money is coming from, and we do have a budget amendment to look at. I'm just trying to look down here. I think we are really big enough now that we do need to have our own IT guy. I know that we person that we've been having so many problems. Each one of us as council members can attest to that there have been issues, and I'm sure the staff as well has had issues with that. So I do think we need to have something that we have a little bit more control over. As far as the changing to a community development supervisor, I think that that's mandatory. I think we have to do that. We have people wanting to come and look at our town and build in our town, and we don't have somebody who can just say, here's a piece of property, there's a piece of property, et cetera, and working with the other agencies in our community who may have property that we can, work on. I think it's time. I think we've had, tried to do it ourselves, but I think we gotta have somebody that's their job to do. I think at some point, I think that one of those people that we have, but that's a different issue as far as a communications officer somewhere, definitely need one in the police department, definitely need one at City Hall. I know people are dividing up those duties at City Hall, but we do need to have somebody who's a point of information. So, but that's not on this list, so I won't go there. So I feel pretty good about what you're presenting here as far as people that we do need on our staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Farmer?
No comments.
Counselor Hicks?
I understand we need more people, but what was the total adjustment we would have to make on our budget for all this
Right there.
request here?
$121,400 is the estimate,
Right there.
the estimated budget amendment total for all 4 of these positions. Well, I guess it's 5 because there's 2 IT.
Is that accounting for the step increases you were talking about earlier, or is that just as it is now?
No.
Right. This is all just as we are now for wages and stuff.
And if I may address one issue, one of the things that you'll want to remember as we look at the Toppenish ILA, we will redo that at some point, and the additional costs will be carried over because we do have split with them. There is an opportunity for the Community and Economic Development Director, if we bring that position on board, to actually increase our property taxes and different types of things that we have going on. So sometimes you pay a little to get a lot in these circumstances.
I understand that.
I might add that this is a reoccurring cost forever too.
Counselor Beeler?
Well, I'm looking back about an hour and a half ago about something that's really hitting the city and hitting the city hard and hitting everybody in the city. And I don't see why we would spend this kind of money where we're not spending money on where we need to spend it at this point. Everything is important, but we got a lot going on in the city. And if we start spending all the money here, we're not going to have it to back up the police department. So I'm kind of torn on this. Thank you,
sir. Deputy Mayor Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, apart from my comments earlier, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to say, I've heard the arguments, Ms. Alba, regarding the Community Economic Development Director before this council, actually. And then I also heard the arguments that we didn't have enough growth to support an economic development director, and that's why we went to a planning supervisor. If this is is this direction you want to go, I trust you. I think council trusts you, so I'm willing to give you the leeway in order to do that. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. I want to see this community economic development director get used, because we need to be able to justify those costs to the community. And we're the second largest city in the valley. We set the example for other smaller cities in the valley. We're now starting to provide multi-city resources. So I think it's time for us to look at, growth and economic development. At the same time, I'm very mindful of the fact that crime has risen drastically in the last 6 to 8 months. Whether that's COVID related or not, I don't know. Whether or not the chief and the public safety committee and the manager can come up with a program, that's yet to be seen. But I think we all need to focus on those things. And when it comes to the budget, obviously, hitting us with this right after the budget was adopted is a little bit disconcerting, but I understand where you're at and the fact that Ms. Horner just came on board, and Ms. Alba, you're just coming on board. So I understand that, but I'm also mindful of the fact that this is the kind of stuff that we need to be thinking about a lot sooner than now.
Sir, my comments are as follows. I think every one of these positions you're talking about is defensible. I can see benefit for each and every one of those. However, as has been mentioned, we've made some comments on crime, and I think those two go hand in hand. If we're going to have an economic development director, we need to help on the other side by getting crime under control. And that's going to take an investment as well. The question that came up with as I was listening to this, what is the source of the funding for all of this? We're talking $121,400. Where is that going to come from? And for how long can we sustain that? I know Ms. Ella mentioned that the possible increase in property tax revenues is one. What other sources do you have for this?
For the IT position, that's a cost allocated position that gets allocated citywide. So it gets costed out through the utilities and all of the special funds. Anything that supports technology or uses technology, supports those positions. So I could get a breakdown of that for you if and when you actually want me to bring this to you for approval. I can get that information for all of these. The recreation, 16,000 would come out of the general fund. There's no other place to put it. However, something to keep in mind is like the program that Gwen is going to be having this summer is all paid for with grant money, but it does have a revenue source that is not deducted from that grant total. So because she's putting these programs into place, she is bringing in additional revenue that has not been budgeted for at this time. So I think that will offset. I think it hopefully will more than offset, but I'm not 100% sure right now. And then the police support supervisor, again, comes out of mostly the general fund, but also would be offset a little bit by revenues from Toppenish. And then economic development is general fund.
Thank you. That helps me get it properly placed in my mind at any rate. But yeah, if we don't get crime down, we're not going to have use for a community development person because it's going to drive people away. If we do get crime down, I think we are poised for expansion, and I think it's something we need to be mindful of. A lot of changes in culture, and a lot of that is a result of COVID. People have discovered that they can work from home, they can work remotely from almost any location. Sunnyside is not a bad place to live. Our climate is phenomenal. And so I can see why people would want to come here. If we can provide the incentives for this community to be welcoming to them, then I think we should make the effort to do that. So, again, thank you for your report. This evening we have received a great deal to think about. And yeah, we may come back with more comments and questions. And as you mentioned, you enjoy this, we might come back with some arguments. So,
happy to. I just thought of one other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys. We did have a staff, we do have a position open in the finance department right now because we had our accounts payable clerk moved on to a different job. And Delilah and I have looked at restructuring our department a little bit, just not in the positions or anything, but just in the roles that they play. And so we are going to have a finance technician that is fully in charge of accounts receivable. And that person is going to really be focused on revenue. And there are a lot of other revenue sources that the city may not be monopolizing on. I think of things like hotel motel tax for Airbnbs and things like that. There are different things we can look at, impact fees for transportation, that may be things that we will have a staff member that has more time to devote to looking at collecting, how to invoice for and collect for some of these revenue things. So it's just another thing to keep in mind. At this point, I guess my question is, do you want me to go forward and bring these to you guys at the next council meeting or council meeting next month, or do you want me to sit on it for a little bit? Or if there's any one of the positions that you want me to bring forward.
Council members can, let's get some feedback on this. We'll just start down at the end of the table. Mr. Beeler, would you like to see this brought forward, or?
I would like us to
take care of this crime stuff first before we start budgeting on these other places. Should be put on hold for a while.
I wouldn't mind seeing the information, but I am in agreement with Mr. Beeler. We need to get our crime down before we start adding more on our budget.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with them too, because we need to get the crime down.
Counselor Hart?
I'm in favor of hiring somebody to work in the Parks and Rec. As everybody knows, if you have idle hands or the devil's playground, we got to give kids things to do to keep them busy, other than maybe we can teach them some art. Some of the graffiti is pretty awful. I do believe that we do need to work ahead with this IT business. I don't think we can stand around and wait on that. I think that the crime thing is, as we have said before, a cyclic, and we can get that under control. I think we're trying to take this, which are apples, and compare them to oranges again. And I don't think that's what we want to do. I think we are going to be able to get the crime under control. I think the chief and his officers and us will be able to do that. I don't think you want to be mixing these two together. That's what I'm trying to say. As far as the IT, the police supervisor and the dispatch, I think we really need to take care of that. There's a lot going on over there. So I really am not torn about this at all. I think we need to move ahead with these particular positions. Thank you.
Counselor Farmer?
Well, I believe this is an issue that certainly deserves more conversation and more study, but at this particular point in time, I think we have one mission in this community, and that is to get crime under control. And until we do that and know what it's going to cost us to do that, I think we ought to postpone it.
Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Well, I guess I'm going to agree to disagree with some of my colleagues on this one. I'm kind of in favor of the direction Ms. Hart is. First of all, I think we can definitely get a handle on the crime issues in our city. I don't think it's going to cost a lot of money, but I also know that we can use ARPA funds for that as well if we need to. I think that's an important piece that we may not be looking at. When it comes to IT, yeah, we definitely need to move forward with IT, folks. I can tell you, the world of IT has gotten so dangerous. It's not funny. With the war in Ukraine, we are seeing huge increases in cyber attacks, and being warned by national command entities that you need to look out for your networks. And that's small companies and large companies alike. So we definitely need IT personnel that answer to the manager, whether or not that's a county contract, or we go out for bid, or we have employees in-house. I'm not so sure whether that, because to be honest with you, you're looking at hiring 2 IT technicians, 2 IT specialists. You're still going to need a network engineer. You're still going to need an Exchange server manager. There's still a lot of things that those guys and gals are not going to be able to provide you at their skill level. So I want to be mindful of that as well. Although I understand the need to have IT staff that you can actually direct, Madam City Manager, and I understand your concerns. I really do. More so than maybe the other council, because I spent 3 hours on the phone with the IT guy from the county, making sure my email was working correctly. So I understand where you guys are going. At the same time, I'm also mindful of the fact that we don't necessarily know what the Public Safety Committee is going to recommend. So maybe we hold off on this for a couple of weeks, not no huge time, but let this Public Safety Committee meet and come out of their session next week with recommendations to council. I don't have any problem with us moving forward on this stuff, but I wouldn't be able to approve it tonight.
I think, if I may, if we can let Al, maybe if he's still on, hopefully, make a comment about the dispatch position, because my understanding from them was that they desperately needed this. And part of that does have to do with addressing the crime that's going on. So I don't know, Al, are you available to speak if you are comfortable holding this off, or if you'd like to see if we can get it pulled forward?
I think that I'm going to agree that we want to speak with public safety first.
Okay.
With the committee, and then we can kind of address that. Now, the dispatcher is certainly, dispatch supervisor is certainly something that we definitely have a need for with the expansion that we're currently attempting to fill at this time with additional dispatchers. I mean, that's too many direct reports for one individual to do, and especially out of class. And so we certainly want somebody who is within the discipline to manage and to lead that discipline in the way that it needs to be done. But I think that we need to sit down with Public Safety Committee first and maybe draw some ideas, but also to provide some more in-depth information for them before we move forward.
Okay. So I think if I can summarize, what I'm hearing is there are a couple council members that would be interested in seeing the IT and the recreation brought forward sooner rather than later, but the rest of them we're going to put off at least for a month.
Well, I haven't waited yet either, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I jump on you?
Yeah, you did. That's okay. So I'm seeing these as two separate problems. I would prioritize the crime issue that we have. I think that is something that really desperately needs to be taken care of. But at the same time, I want us to be ready to pull the trigger on these positions as soon as the opportunity presents itself, which means what I think is that you should continue developing this and move forward on it so that once public safety has met and we've come up with a plan, it's approved by council, we're moving forward, then we can step in and say, okay, let's start hiring these guys. And I want it to be ready to go so that we're not behind the eight ball trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to structure this? Instead, we can say, we've got it all structured, we're ready to go. Now's the time to pull the trigger on it because we're moving ahead on this crime thing and we're seeing results.
Sounds good. Got it.
Hear, hear, Mr. Mayor.
If I may say something really quick. The Community and Economic Development Director, if we decide to change that and not hire the planning supervisor, Mike Shuttleworth's last day is March 31st, and this was our opportunity to make that change without changing somebody's job while they're on the job. And I understand council's hesitant to, not go forward with it. But at this point, I will need to go out for the planning supervisor so that we can get someone on board and have someone either ready before Mike leaves or the day he's out. So just so you know, that is a decision that is very timely. Because if we decide tonight not to move forward with that one, then I will be advertising for a planning supervisor.
That's very good to know. Thank you. All right, further comments on this item from council members?
I think each one of these positions should be broke down, and we should do each one individually rather than this group.
Well, I think that's correct, and I think that's pretty much how it will play out. We have a group presented for us, these are ideas, but we're not gonna hire them all in the same week.
Right.
So, and nothing happens quite that orderly in life. I'm sure that happens in your business. Nothing structures quite that neatly. We're not suddenly gonna hire 5 people in a week, the first week of April. That would be fun if we could, but. All right. Items from council members, upcoming council meetings. Madam City Manager.
Sorry, I don't have my pen all the way down. Let me keep going here. I'm doing the same thing Jameson is. I have like three screens. So our March 14th regular meeting, we have scheduled a comprehensive plan update public hearing. And I know there are some other items on there that just have not made it to the actual agenda planning. March 28th, approved contract for prosecuting services following the RFP. And that is all we have at this point.
Okay, thank you. Council members, if you have anything that needs to be added to the agenda, please talk to the city manager or myself for next week. It should be pretty quick if it's going to be on the 14th. It should be in the year too. March 28th, let's get that. When would you like to have that?
We'd like to have agenda items on the agenda before the next meeting so that we can plan for it. So if there's items somebody wants us to put on there.
Let's get it done by Friday.
I'd really like to see something for city manager contract.
I am working on that one. I have stuff ready to go. As soon as my email is once again functioning, I will get that involved in that, so.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you and I
Yes,
need to
sir.
schedule, you and I, sir, need to schedule an appointment with the city manager to sit down and talk to her about her evaluation.
Yes, the city manager, I mentioned that the city manager this afternoon, that is coming up as well. So yeah, definitely on the top of my mind. So I will talk to you in the next day or two, and we will see if we can get all of our schedules working together.
Perfect.
All right. There being no further business to come before council and without objection, this meeting is adjourned at 8:40 PM. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
All right. All right.